I'm Ben Dawson.
I'm Mackenzie Hotman. Hillary Scare.
Alicia Cartwright.
And we're
Exercise Missoula. So, Exercise Missoula was formed to discover exercising habits of students attending the University of Montana. Factors we included were how frequently students exercise, how many credits students were currently enrolled in, employment and employment hours, types of exercise activities, exercise facilities students prefer, gender, and age. The research method we used was a convenience survey, which we passed out throughout campus. This survey was given to freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and senior undergraduates, as well as some graduate students currently enrolled at the University of Montana. Our group ended up surveying 110 students. So to start out with our univariate analysis and the significant findings, our first question we asked was, are you a student at the University of Montana? 100% of the 110 students surveyed answered yes. Our next univariate analysis question we asked was, are you a student athlete? We found this significant because only 5 of our respondents were student athletes. The next question we asked was, how many credits are you taking? We found that 63 of our 110 respondents were taking 14 to 18 credits, which means that they were full-time students. Our next question was, are you currently employed? About 61% of respondents are employed. Next, we asked students how many hours they work per week, and the majority of students that worked said they worked 10 hours and under per week. Next, we asked how frequently they exercise. The majority of respondents said they don't work out often, they work out occasionally, or they work out often or very often, and few respondents said that they work out never. We asked students how often they bike on a scale of 1 to 5. At a minimum, biking is used at least occasionally as a physical activity by 42.7%. It is still largely underutilized by 57.3% of our respondents. We also asked students how often they hike or backpack. Backpacking is used at least occasionally as a physical activity by 58.3% and is only underutilized by 41.7% of our respondents.
For our next question, we asked students, how often do you participate in running on a scale of 1 to 5? Responses showed that on average, people are more likely to answer with a 3, meaning they occasionally run. In our next question, we asked respondents, how often do you work out at the rec center? Our findings showed that 26.4% of respondents never work out at the rec center, 22.7% occasionally do, 19.1% exercise there very often, and from this data we can deduce that the majority of respondents never work out at the rec center. The following question, how often do you use a gym, dance studio, or exercise facility off campus or outside recreation, was asked of our respondents, and we found out that 50% of respondents said they never use a facility outside of campus recreation. Since our survey respondents were mostly full-time students, it leads us to believe that once students are on campus, they stay to work out because of convenience. The following question that we asked surveyors was, what time of day do you normally exercise? Studies showed that 36.4% of respondents enjoy working out in the evenings, which leads us to believe that people prefer to exercise at the end of their school day or work day. Our next question was used to find out the average age of our respondents. Our findings showed that 64.5% of respondents are ages 19 to 22, which makes sense considering surveys were passed out on the University of Montana campus. Now we will move on to our multivariate analysis. During our multivariate analysis, we decided to compare questions X4 and X7. Are you currently employed, and how frequently do you exercise? Although a clear majority response was not available for unemployed individuals, there was a 25 to 15 ratio of people that stated they exercised often, very often, to those who responded with never, not often.
And next up on the multivariate analysis, we did a comparison of what time of day do you normally exercise and what impact your gender had on that. For our findings, we found that females and males differed in the time of day that they generally exercised. Our sampled female population appeared to exercise in the evenings, and males typically exercised in the afternoon. In contrast, females were the least likely to exercise in the afternoon, and males were least likely to get out of bed in the morning to go exercise. Next in our analysis, we went ahead and compared what you're in school and how often do you work out at the rec center. We found the freshmen and sophomores tend to exercise at the rec center very often. In contrast, juniors and seniors were recorded to respond most often with either never or occasionally working out at the rec center. Lastly, of those respondents who were within the category of graduate or other, the most popular responses were never for both parties. So it seemed that the older, farther through school students got, the less likely they were to use the rec center. Next, we went ahead and did a comparison of how gender, or what impact gender had on the frequency of use of the physical activities listed in our survey. Our analysis was run with a 95% confidence interval, and of which we found that women were more likely to be using yoga as a physical activity. Weightlifting had a greater frequency of men. Rock climbing had a greater frequency of men. Martial arts had a greater frequency of men. Swimming had a greater frequency of men. Water sports had a greater frequency of men. Those were the 6 with a strongest correlation of less than 0.10. The other remaining 5 that had the weakest correlation between frequency and gender were dancing, which had a larger mean of women using it as a physical activity. Running, which had a larger mean of men using it. Next was hiking and backpacking, which had a larger mean of women using. Snow sports had a larger mean of men using this, and biking had a larger mean of men using this as a physical activity. Only the first 6 had correlations that looked like they had an impact based off of gender. Okay, so next, this is just the multivariate analysis and the comparison. It's a table representing the data, which is also available in our final research project. Summary of our significant findings are that the data indicates there are just as many students who never, not often, or occasionally exercise as compared with students who exercise often and very often. The results for how frequent students exercise was about average for each response category, except for never, which a few people did answer. The data also indicates that the majority of students don't use the rec center often or very often. Also, the majority of students don't use other exercise facilities often. Most students said that they never use other facilities off campus and outside recreation. From the data indications above and other data, we conclude that most students are more inclined to bike, backpack, hike, and run for preferred physical activities. For limitations, we found that we felt our population size of 110 people was a little limiting. We would have preferred more of a better mix between male and female students, and perhaps mixing up and getting additional like freshmen and just a more broad and diverse demographic from all of our respondents. We also found that when answered question 13, may have been due to poor wording, but it just seemed to confuse many of our participants. Another thing that may have hindered our results was the wording to some of our other questions, like for variables 18 and 19, when we asked students if they participate in water sports or snow sports. Most people didn't know that that also included skiing and snowboarding and other sports that have to do with specifically snow sports. In conclusion, if we were to do this research again in the future, we would review our survey more carefully and survey more people using a different method. Missoula, Montana and the University of Montana cater best to the outdoor forms of exercise, and people who are outdoor oriented love to live here, making it one of the best places to live. This concludes our presentation, and we thank you for your time and hope that this has been an enlightening experience for you. Have a great day.